Hi, I'm Zack DeZon, and welcome to Quarantography. And then in my mind, there's like a crazy news type virus epidemic intro that says Quarantography. Probably can't afford it though. This is what I am calling Quarantography. Photography tips for those who cannot leave the house. A little about myself. I'm a photographer. I've been doing this for over 10 years. My specialties are portrait and documentary with a little bit of food as well. Just generally what you might call a commercial photographer. I'm angling this to be what I would call a low intermediate to low advanced tutorial channel, if you will. What that means is I'm not going to be covering basic things like ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. There's already so much wonderful stuff out there on the internet to help you understand what those are, and I just don't feel like I need to add to that. We only have so much time, hopefully, in this quarantine. Ooh, I'm sweating. I just really wanted to focus on some things that I thought were super helpful when I figured them out that maybe wouldn't have clicked for you so early in your learning experience. So yeah, without any further ado, my first lesson is something that it took me probably a good 5 or 6 years to really realize. For me, when I got started, everything was lighting. Lighting. How do I get the best lighting, and why doesn't my image look like the cover of Vogue or Wired or one of these other amazing magazines that I could only dream one day of shooting for? It had to be the lighting, right? That was what was making the difference between my photo and that one. And to an extent, that is true-ish. However, it's not the end-all, be-all you may be thinking it is. There are so many absolutely amazing photos out there that do not rely on particularly technical executions for their impact. So yeah, I've downloaded a couple of very famous photos you've probably seen before, just to kind of prove my point a little bit. I'm sure you can find plenty of examples of the contrary, but this is just to show that not every photo relies on fabulous lighting for its power. So we're going to start here. Very famous shot, end of World War II, sailor kissing his girlfriend in the street in Old Times Square. This photo, technically, is not amazing. It's actually like the focus isn't quite perfect. The colors are kind of contrasting in awkward ways. It doesn't really pop very much, but the moment is so charged with emotion and power and story that you can't help but be amazed. It's a really, really beautiful moment. Here's another really classic migrant mother. It looks like a cloudy day. Very competently, framed it. It's not, impressive light. It's just fine light. And, the power here is absolutely in the story, in the expression, in what's happening here. I use a lot of journalistic examples when I talk about this because journalists just have what they're presented with. They really are at the mercy of their subjects, and they do amazing work. They hunt down these incredible subjects. So that really cannot be understated how important that is. The third example is I'm going to use as an example to something where you can play with yourself. Very famous Afghan girl. This is lit very simply. It looks like a window or an open door. It's not anything particularly complicated light-wise. Once again, technically, he exposed correctly. Wow. What's incredible about this photo is the girl's expression, her piercing gaze, the color play between the green background and her red hood. Then that's where the real artistry was here, is getting this real moment with this girl. So all of these have been, absolutely fabulous photos, but they were not necessarily amazing because of their technicals. They had more to do with what I'm going to broadly call the subject. What I mean by that is what's in your frame, not how you light it. It matters what you're photographing. It matters how you place it, style it, interact with it if it's a person. Styling applies to that as well. So what would happen a lot as I looked at these these pictures in especially fashion magazines. Fashion magazines held a lot of sway for me in my early learning time. I would look at a picture in, say, Vogue, and I'd be like, wow, what a stunning image. What about it is really amazing. It must be the lighting. And I try and reverse engineer the light. This is something I really recommend you do. I will be covering lighting in another video. And I set up this photo in what I really felt like was the actual light. And I'm sure I was off to a certain degree, but they weren't looking right. It wouldn't necessarily be because I had lit it so wrong, as much as the fact that the photo I was referring to was a top model wearing fabulous clothing with makeup done to the nines, hair same, posed just so, and selected and arranged, and even like the layout of type around an image can add a lot to it. So what does that mean for you who's stuck at home? You might be saying, I don't have access to hair, makeup models, whatever. That's okay, especially since we're all locked in. I don't think that's going to be something you have to deal with. However, there are things you can do. So I'm going to come over to a space I've designated to be my studio at this moment. I'm not in a particularly large apartment, so forgive me for that. We're going to start with a couple examples of things where the lighting is fairly consistent, not particularly dramatic, and show you the difference it can make when a subject is engaging or boring. As for post-processing, that's another thing I'll cover in another video, but I'm going to put some post-processing on that. I'm not going to get into the details of it. The point is it's going to be consistent from shot to shot, and you'll be able to see the difference a subject makes. The way they're posed, what they're wearing, and once again, it doesn't have to be high fashion, but it does make a difference what you're wearing, and things like that. So going forward, before we even muck about in things like lighting tutorials and all that, I want to make sure you are thinking critically about what is in your image and how it is presented. So let's go to the examples. So what I want to show you here is the results from a couple of test shoots I did with my long-suffering girlfriend Emma as my subject. She was very kind to do this, and I thank her from the bottom of my heart. So in my first photo setup, I used the Afghan girl as my template and used windows off to my right to get a nice broad light that I thought would approximate what the photographer was working with. And I took the cheesiest photo possible using that light. Here we are. Emma in her Cape Cod sweats, looking a little goofy. You can see the impact is absolutely not there. It's not the lighting. The lighting isn't carrying anything. If anything, this lighting looks a little cheesy to my eyes. However, once I had her change and made some creative decisions in wardrobe and hair and makeup, I mean, she did most of it, of course, but I had opinions, and having opinions is what matters here. I took some time to pose her and work with her and make it a real portrait shoot. Here is the result, same light. I would say that's a massive improvement. So yeah, I mean, that just goes to show you, if you take a photo and you aren't wild about how it's turned out, don't be like young me and blame the light. There's so much more going on in a photo. I have one more thing I want to show you. This is a very different kind of light. This is an on-camera flash look, the kind you might see popularized by Jürgen Teller or David LaChapelle. He uses a ring light. It's slightly different, but it's basically the same idea. Here's kind of an uninteresting one. It's still kind of cool. I mean, she looks pretty cool. Her skin's all blown out, which a lot of people like. And it looks like she's got caught in a club or something like that. But we took our time and we decided to play with something a little bit more silly, playful, interesting. And we just like stacked up some sheets and we ended up with this, which I think is way more interesting. I actually might use this for something. And it's the exact same light, And it's a very different concept, and you wouldn't really know that these are the same lighting setup if you weren't looking for it. And it's just a completely different tone of photograph. So in conclusion, my advice to you is this: don't get too hung up on the light in a photo, the technicals. Is this perfect? I think it's a lot more helpful and effective as an artist to focus on what your concept is, what's in your frame, how it is arranged, how it is styled, and the concept you're trying to get through, what you're trying to say about a person if it's a portrait, what you're trying to say about an object if it's a still life. I would argue that lighting is secondary if you are trying to make an effective image. So I'd love to give you guys an assignment. Take a photo in one kind of light, and using that same light, make a photo with a drastically different feeling. If you're a member of my Patreon, there is a community Discord where you can post your images and I will give my feedback. We can call it a crit if you like. And we have a lot of fun with this. I want to see what you guys are making. That's my video. It's my first time doing this, so go easy on me. If you like it, and go ahead and subscribe. I guess that's a thing we're supposed to ask for. Like, subscribe, YouTube, fun stuff. Thank you so much, and stay safe out there.